I've always considered myself a pretty good judge of character. I thought I could spot the creeps, the liars, the ones who were hiding something. My date with Clara proved how wrong I was. It taught me that the most terrifying monsters aren't the ones who hide in the shadows. They're the ones who hide in plain sight, smiling at you, making you believe they're the one you'd been searching for. I met her at a coffee shop. She was an artist, she said, and she had this intense, captivating way of looking at you, like she was seeing more than just the surface. We bonded over a shared love for an obscure indie band and agreed to a first date at a quiet, speakeasy-style bar downtown. From the moment I sat down, the date felt perfect, almost too perfect. She had already ordered me my favorite, slightly uncommon brand of bourbon, saying she had a feeling I'd like it. The jukebox, as if on cue, started playing a deep cut from the very band we'd talked about. What a coincidence, she'd said, with a dazzling smile. Everything I said, she seemed to understand on a deeper level. She finished my sentences. She laughed at my jokes a half second before the punchline. She asked about my job as a rare book restorer, a niche profession I rarely talked about, displaying a surprising amount of knowledge on the topic. "How do you know so much about binding techniques?" I asked, impressed. "I am a naturally curious person," she replied, her eyes sparkling. "I like to learn about things that interest me." I was flattered. It felt like I had finally met someone who just got me. But as the night wore on, the flattery began to curdle into a strange unease. The coincidences kept piling up until they no longer felt like coincidences. They felt like research. She mentioned the small, family-owned bakery I went to every Saturday morning. "I was just walking by there today," she said casually. "Their almond croissants are divine, aren't they?" I had never told her about that bakery. After a few drinks, she suggested a walk. "There's a little park not far from here," she said. "I think you'll like it. It's quiet." We walked through the sleeping city streets. The unease was a knot in my stomach now. She was leading the way with a confidence that felt out of place. We entered the park, a small patch of green nestled between towering office buildings. She led me down a path to a secluded bench beneath a huge, ancient willow tree. She stopped in front of it and turned to me, her face illuminated by the soft glow of a nearby lamppost. "This is it, isn't it? This is your favorite spot, where you come to read when you need to escape." The blood drained from my face. It was true. For years, that specific bench had been my private sanctuary. I had never taken a photo of it. I'd never posted about it online. I'd never told a single soul it was my spot. How did you know that?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. The charming smile fell from her face. It didn't crumble. It was simply removed like a mask. The look in her eyes was no longer captivating. It was obsessive, predatory. "I'm an artist, Alex," she said, her voice dropping to a low, intense register. "My medium is observation, and for the past 6 months, you have been my masterpiece." She reached into her satchel and pulled out a large, leather-bound sketchbook. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I thought she was going to show me landscapes or portraits of strangers. She opened it. The first page was a breathtakingly detailed pencil drawing of me, sitting in the coffee shop where we'd met weeks ago. She flipped the page. Another drawing of me, this time browsing the shelves in that little bakery. Page after page, it was my life, chronicled in stark, intimate detail. Me walking my dog, me laughing with friends at a bar, me sitting on this very bench lost in a book. Then, the drawings changed. They became more invasive. There was a drawing of me through my apartment window, working at my desk. Another of me watching TV on my couch. My blood turned to ice. She hadn't just been following me on the street. She had been watching my home. Then she got to the last section. The drawings were of the inside of my apartment, but now she had drawn herself into them. Clara, sitting on my couch, pouring a glass of wine. Clara, standing in my kitchen, looking through my fridge. The final, horrifying drawing was of my bedroom. I was asleep in my bed, and she was sitting in the chair in the corner, just watching me. "I know everything about you, Alex," she whispered, her fingers tracing the drawing of my sleeping face. "I know you sleep on your left side. I know you're afraid of spiders. And I know that you've been lonely for a very, very long time, but you don't have to be anymore." I was speechless, paralyzed by a violation so profound I couldn't process it. I finally found my voice. "I'm insane," I stammered, getting to my feet. "Stay away from me." I turned to leave, but her voice stopped me, sharp and cold as a shard of glass. "Where are you going? I've invested so much time in us. You can't just walk away. The story isn't finished." I didn't reply. I just walked, then jogged, then ran out of that park. I didn't look back, but I could feel her eyes on me the entire way. I got home, locked and deadbolted my door, and drew every curtain. But the feeling of being watched never left. The police said until she made a direct threat or tried to break in, there was little they could do. All I could do was live with the knowledge that I wasn't just a person anymore. I was a work of art. And the artist was still out there, observing, waiting for the right moment to add the final, terrifying brushstroke. A first date is a gamble. You're betting a few hours of your time on the possibility that the stranger sitting across from you might be the one, or at least not a complete waste of an evening. You look for green flags, you navigate the red ones, and you hope for the best. Most of the time, the worst-case scenario is a boring conversation or a disagreement over the check. But I went on a date where the worst-case scenario was something I couldn't have imagined in my darkest nightmares. And it all started with a home-cooked meal. His name was Liam. We met on a dating app, and he was, for lack of a better word, perfect. He was a landscape architect, handsome in a rugged way, and his messages were witty and articulate. After a week of great conversation, he asked me out. He suggested he cook me dinner at his place. Normally, that's a huge red flag, but he was so disarming about it. He said he was a passionate cook, that he hated the noise of restaurants, and he wanted to be able to talk without shouting over bad music. He sent me a picture of the lasagna he was famous for. It looked incredible. I said yes. He lived out of town, way out. He called it his sanctuary. The drive there should have been my first warning. The further I drove, the more the tidy suburbs melted away, replaced by dense forest and winding country roads. My cell service vanished. Finally, I turned onto a long gravel driveway that led to his house. It was a beautiful, old Victorian, set back from the road on a huge plot of land, surrounded by a dark curtain of ancient pines. Impressive, but deeply isolated. He greeted me at the door with a warm smile and a glass of wine. Inside, the house was immaculate. Polished dark wood, antique furniture, everything in its place. It felt less like a home and more like a museum. My mother was an interior designer, he explained, noticing my awe. She had a very specific vision for this place. I tried to keep it just the way she liked it. The evening was wonderful at first. He was charming, the food was delicious, and the conversation flowed easily. But there were little things, odd things. He spoke of his mother, who had passed away a few years prior, in the present tense. Mother insists on using real silver, he'd say, or Mother believes a good wine can save any meal. It was strange, but I chalked it up to a grief he hadn't fully processed. After dinner, I needed to use the restroom. "Of course," he said, his smile tightening just a fraction. "Please, only that door." His tone was suddenly sharp, insistent. It was no longer a suggestion, it was an order. The warmth in the room seemed to cool by several degrees. I nodded, a little taken aback, and made my way up the grand, creaking staircase. At the top of the stairs, the hallway was long and dark, lined with closed doors. I found the bathroom, but as I closed the door behind me, I heard a sound from the room next door. A faint, rhythmic scratching. Scrape, scrape, scrape. It sounded like fingernails on wood. My curiosity turned into a cold, prickling fear. What was he hiding? Why was he so adamant I not open any other door? After I used the restroom, I stood in the hallway, my heart hammering in my chest. The door next to the bathroom was an old, heavy oak. I reached out and tried the handle. Locked. The scratching sound had stopped, but I could feel a presence on the other side. A cold dread washed over me. I should have just gone back downstairs. I should have made an excuse and left, but I didn't. On a small end table next to the door, I saw a small ornate silver key. It looked like it belonged to a jewelry box, but something told me it was for this door. My hands trembled as I picked it up and slid it into the lock. It turned with a soft click. I pushed the door open. The room was a bedroom, preserved like a time capsule from the 1950s. A thick layer of dust covered everything except for the four-poster bed in the center of the room, and the thing lying in it. It was the body of an old woman. She was emaciated, her skin like yellowed parchment stretched tight over a skeleton. Her eyes were closed, her hands folded on her chest. But this wasn't just a body, she was preserved. Her hair was perfectly coiffed and she was dressed in a beautiful silk nightgown. It was his mother. She hadn't been buried. She was still here. My stomach churned. On the bedside table sat a tray. On it was a plate of lasagna, the same meal he had just cooked for me, and a glass of water, both untouched. He hadn't just kept her body, he was still taking care of her, feeding her. A floorboard creaked downstairs. Footsteps were coming up the stairs. Panic seized me. I slipped out of the room, locking the door and placing the key back on the table just as Liam reached the top of the stairs. He was holding a kitchen knife. He saw my look on my face, and his charming smile vanished, replaced by a mask of pure fury. He said, "I told you," his voice a low growl, "I told you only that door." He saw my eyes dart to the locked bedroom door, and a look of anguish crossed his face. "You weren't supposed to see her," he whispered, tears welling in his eyes. "She doesn't like visitors. Now she's upset." He took a step towards me, the knife held low. "I'm afraid you can't leave. Mother doesn't like loose ends." I didn't think. I just ran. I sprinted down the hallway, him right behind me. I heard him yelling, "Don't run from us! She hates it when they run!" I reached the top of the stairs and half ran, half fell down them, my ankle twisting painfully. I scrambled to my feet and bolted for the front door. I fumbled with the deadbolt as he thundered down the stairs behind me. The lock finally gave way, and I burst out into the cold night air, the gravel of the driveway biting into my feet. I didn't dare look back. I just ran, my lungs on fire. The image of that perfectly preserved corpse burned into my mind. I ran until the gravel turned to pavement, and I kept running until the first headlights of a passing car offered a sliver of salvation. The last thing I heard before the car screeched to a halt was Liam's voice, carried on the wind from the dark woods, a heartbroken, terrifying wail. "Mother, she's gone!" Sometimes the horror of a first date isn't the person you're with, it's the person you don't know is there, pulling the strings. My date with Mark taught me that some people are just puppets, and you don't find out who the puppeteer is until it's far too late. A mutual friend set me up with Mark. She said he was a great guy, just a little shy. And he was. Our date, a movie, his choice, was fine. He was sweet, but so quiet and nervous it was hard to have a real conversation. He spent half the movie nervously checking his phone, a dim glow illuminating his anxious face every 10 minutes. "Sorry," he'd whisper. "It's just my best friend Leo. He gets worried." It struck me as odd, a grown man whose best friend needed constant updates during a first date. But I brushed it off as an overly protective friendship. After the movie, he asked if I wanted to go for a drive, talk a little. I agreed, hoping he might finally open up. We drove for a while, the silence in the car thick and awkward. His phone buzzed again, this time with a call. He answered it, putting it on the car's Bluetooth. "Hello," Mark said tentatively. "How's it going?" A man's voice replied, smooth and confident, the polar opposite of Mark's voice. "Is she boring you to death yet?" Mark shot me a panicked look. "Leo, no, it's fine. She's great. We're just driving." "Driving where?" Leo's voice was sharp. "You're not taking her to the spot, are you? You know how I feel about that." "No, of course not," Mark said quickly. "We're just driving." He hung up, his face pale. "I'm so sorry. He's just very particular." He pulled the car over at a scenic overlook, a deserted spot with a view of the city lights. It could have been romantic, but the atmosphere was just tense. We sat there for a few minutes, the silence stretching on, when a pair of headlights appeared in the rearview mirror, approaching fast. A sleek black sports car pulled up right behind us. Mark let out a small, terrified whimper. "Oh no, it's him." A man got out of the car. He was tall, dressed in a stylish jacket, and moved with an air of absolute command. This was Leo. He walked to the driver's side of Mark's car, completely ignoring me, and yanked the door open. "Get out," he said to Mark, his voice dangerously low. Mark scrambled out of the car like a reprimanded child. I was frozen in the passenger seat, watching as Leo backed him against the guardrail. They weren't shouting, but their conversation was violent in its intensity. Leo did all the talking, his hands gesturing aggressively, while Mark just stood there, head bowed, nodding. After a few minutes, Leo seemed to come to a decision. He left Mark by the rail and strode over to my side of the car, tapping on the window. My hand shook as I lowered it. He leaned down, and the charismatic smile he gave me didn't reach his cold, dead eyes. "Hi there," he said, his voice like velvet and steel. "Sorry for the interruption. Mark here is still in training, and I have to approve of all his extracurricular activities. Think of me as quality control." His smile widened. "And unfortunately, you have not passed the quality control check." My blood ran cold. "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about the fact that you're not right for him. He needs someone different, someone I've chosen. So this is over. Get out of the car." I looked over at Mark, who was still standing by the rail, looking utterly defeated. He wouldn't even meet my eyes. He was completely under Leo's thumb. It was then that the horrifying realization clicked into place. I pulled out my phone and looked at the number I'd been texting with all week, the one I thought was Mark. I thought back to the witty messages, the confident plans. That wasn't shy, awkward Mark. That was him. That was Leo. "It was you," I whispered, looking up at him. "It was. I was the one you were texting." Leo's smile was triumphant. "Of course. Mark can't be trusted with these things. I vet all the candidates. I set the stage, and he plays his part. Most of them are smart enough to figure it out and play along. You were just boring." The world tilted on its axis. This whole night, this whole date was a game, a test, and I was just a pawn. "Now," he said, his voice losing all its charm. I said, "Get out." I got out of the car, my legs feeling like jelly. Leo gestured down the dark, empty road leading back to town. "Start walking, and don't look back. Don't call him. Don't contact him. This date never happened. Do you understand?" I nodded, unable to speak. I started walking down that dark road, every nerve in my body screaming. I could hear Leo talking to Mark behind me. "See, that's how it's done. Now let's go. The next one is meeting us in an hour." I didn't dare look back. I just walked, my footsteps echoing in the terrifying silence, a third wheel in a sick, twisted game I never even knew I was playing. The worst part wasn't the fear. It was the humiliation, the chilling realization that my entire night of hope and anxiety was nothing more than someone else's cruel entertainment. Hey friends, thanks for listening. Click that notification bell to be alerted of all future narrations. If you got a story, be sure to submit them over at the comments section, and maybe even hear your story featured on the next video. Thanks so much, friends, and I'll see you again soon. Good night.